Greetings, likers, commenters, subscribers, and hopefully future subscribers, depending on how this video goes for you. So, we're looking at this one here. TI, the third strongest function in the NIT, the contender rational. Are there any that would like to disagree with me? So, a way of doing it is by saying, are there any INTJs out there who think their FI is stronger than their TI? Or their SI is stronger than their TI? There we go. So, now I would say that the INTJ tends to use TI negatively, critically, very good in debate and finding issues with somebody's thinking. So you frequently get that in a conversation between an INTJ and an INTP, where the INTJ resembler is able to ask pertinent questions of the INTP, find faults in the model. So, this position, modest servant, aka fish's water. But it's called fish's water because the INTJ fish does not know it's wet with TI, just like the INTP fish does not know it's wet with NI. But NI is even harder to feel. Next position. Oh, yes. So you can see here from the dimensions. Oh, that bit's gone. That it is a valued function. It's not a valued function. It is an unvalued function, a default function, and a club function. So interestingly, it, like position 2, the auxiliary, is also a two-dimensional function. So it then becomes, well, but in practice, TE tends to be stronger because preference leads to practice, practice leads to ability. But this, you could argue, is more heavily involved with the NI, because if we think about it, and if we really verb it, the introverting, the INTJ resembler is doing a lot of introverting, a lot of subjectifying. Therefore, their thinking is going to be colored by said subjectification. So their thinking is going to have the character of TI. Only when they are then applying their intellect to the world and thinking about utility and practicality and achieving these long-range strategic objectives, only then is their thinking extroverting. And again, I'll put the ings in there to emphasize these are dynamic cognitive processes. Extroverted and introverted makes it sound like it happened in the past. It's misapplying a verb into an adjective. So I want to describe this position. I'm not going to read through bits that I've already read through again. I'm just going to, like, if you pause the screen, you can read this bit about the clubs. I've banged on about the clubs. Basically, for the INTJ, the data would show that all the NT functions are strong in the INTJ. That's the actual data from Dario Nardi that an outside party, Minor Barame, analyzed. And that's at the cognitive processes assessment. And so the website is keysthecognition.com. So it's consistent with the data, and it's consistent with Model A, where the strong rows, the ego, and the id are strong rows. So, and then there's this on verting. Basically, the point here is default operating mode. That's what we need to take home from this. Default operating mode. So default operating mode of the INTJ resembler, introverting, subjectifier. Jung mentioned it. It sees towards the subject. Everyone whose attitude is introverted thinks, feels, and acts in a way that clearly demonstrates the subject as a chief factor of motivation. Secondary value. Right. So it's there. Don't need to go over that again. I go over this section a lot in the first video. So something to mention then is this bit. So this has been covered and this has been covered. So unsung allies growth. Right. And then this position. Credit to Dr. Victor Galenka, 23 appearances on my Ben Vaserlan YouTube channel, by the way, for emphasizing the importance of slot 3. First person to write about the strength of slot 3 was Dutch psychiatrist J.H. van der Hoop, taught by Jung. See Conscious Orientation, 1939. I could put the diagram in, but it's quicker just to show it on screen. So I'll show you Van der Hoop's diagram and like how prominent FE was in the ENFP diagram and how prominent NI is in. I'm just going to change this then to that. So this is ENFP. Yay, focused. And you got model V there on the right. So you see that? You see the size of that area of FE? It's the ENFP. The extroverted feeling type with subsidiary feeling. And the polarity of ST functions. FE. Fish is water. Get the autofocus going on there. Now, hello, Mickey. Are you going to give me a super chat, Mickey? Right. And then you got NI. Again, look at the area of NI. So this is probably the first person, Van der Hoop, J.H. Van der Hoop, probably the first person to sort of recognize the importance of this fish's water position, the modest servant. And he's got here, I don't want to read it through, but he gives an idea there of how NI works in INTP. And then this one will give an idea of how FE works in, I'll just get to this comment in a moment, that of how FE works in ENFP. Maybe don't change the page, because then I can keep the same focus. And then is it there more on FE and ENFP? And then there, this idea of situational and default. When in a state of introversion. See there, situational. So sort of converge at the same time, my ideas and Van der Hoop's. I think Van der Hoop sort of got me over the finishing line. Right, I'm just going to get back to this comment on screen. You might not be able to see it on... then you're such a TI dumb. As I.L.I, I could never find the patience to systematize diagram like that. Well, maybe if there was some utility in it, you would. Right. The only way I'm going to get people interested in this is if I get my sitcom on our channel, and then more people will watch because they'll be interested. Right. But I will plug away. First person to write about the... Okay, Van der Hoop. On page 424 of Dario Nardi's Magic Diamond, it is stated, or rather the Magic Diamond, that slot 4 was the fourth highest score in 33% of CP assessments taken. Now, see, the thing is, that slot 4 was also sometimes slot 3, and I think was also the third highest, and then sometimes I think the tertiary was also third highest. So this is what I mean about it being mostly in line with Dario's data, because, you know, someone's development certain functions will be higher than others. So, for example, think of a female INTP that grew up in the countryside and did a lot of extroverting activities in the countryside, and certain upbringing and challenges will develop her SE and make her have be an INTP resembler with ENTP like SE. Not that that's that high. I know folks have taken it more than once. Sometimes slot 4 is third highest scorer, I ahead of slot 3. Key finding: 96% of subjects had the top 3 functions from the same club. There. 96% of subjects had the top 3 functions from the same club. Note on slot 4. I'm just going to mention this briefly. Hello, Retro Gamer. He's a good super chatter. Retro Gamer 71. I'll get to that next time, slot 4, but I'm going to mention it just now. Tinnites resembler, working in science is going to be highly aware of TE, data, scientific method, empiricism, and cold proper approach. Falsification aims to eliminate subjective error. Are you going to, you know, is anyone out there going to challenge me on the fact that INTPs are in science? You know, and therefore they got to be using TE. You know, Right. So, okay. The type fish doesn't know it's wet with this function. I'll go over these subfunctions. This is not going to be that long a video today. Right. So, this good question from Alex. Where do you stand, Ben, on fish in water? Well, fish is water, and Jung's archetype with function attitudes. Are we not immersed in archetypal influence? Yeah, you can have cash for questions. Yes, it can be cash for questions. I mean, like an MP, a corrupt MP, cash for questions. Although in this case, it's not £2,000. So yeah, with the archetypes, I don't believe that John Beebe's archetypes, given the wealth of material that is there, and given what was done with archetypes with his model is, let's just say I'm not a fan of the Beebe model. Right. Although, to be fair, I've not read enough about it, but I've heard him talk about it and I wasn't impressed. He's also a liar as well. He said Carl Jung wrote one line on the auxiliary function. Yeah, well, there's 27 of those lines, and if you measure them, if you add them all up, it's over 3 meters. Thank you, Retro. So, there's not that much of TI in a ranger, although maybe if we think about what that is, if you're thinking about what's going on, well, if this could happen, that could happen. Well, and if this happens, we then do that. So sometimes that third function. So what I'm going to show the importance of this position, I'm going to slightly digress outside of INTJ for a moment. So this third slot, right? I'm going to mention what the third function is for all of these types which are good at these roles. So this role of modeler, so that's inventor, right? So ENTP, their third slot function is TE. And that role of modeler would draw on any TI and TE. Promoter, ESTP. But they're good at TE. But the actual role of promoter, does it need TE? Maybe. But I would say, here, collaborating performer, expressive with emotions. So that role, the role of performer, of show player in English, a thespian, would draw an SE, FI, and FE. Why SE? Because you're immersing yourself in the present context, and it is, and really, SE is extroverting, sensual instinctum. And a key thing of acting is being in the moment. When I recently had an audition sent to me by a natural, she's only just done some like student films, but she's really good. It was a really good audition of Wilma. So, but she lives quite a far away. So I'm trying to work her into Wilma's housemates as a sort of a role that's on a video role. A certain character's boss. Right, I don't want to give away too many details. I'll hopefully posting some scenes soon, like within the next 6 months. So, SE. So if you think of supervisor, the ESTJ enforces the rules, enforces standard operating procedure. The drill sergeant. So you can see SE being used there. Fish is water. TI. I always thought about this. How does ISTJ use TI? And I asked somebody about this with a relative, an ISTJ relative, and they think it might be, because I suggested it, and like she agreed that like might be improving the system, taking the system that is like outside of them, not coming up with their own system, but improving the system, because they look towards an authority because they're guardian, contender guardian. ESFJ. ESFJ. Right, I'm going to give you an example of ESFJ using SE. The Real Rena. Now, she posted this on Facebook. And she posted this on Facebook in a public. So, here we go. A message for such and such, and the man in the blue ute that dumped rubbish out the front of my townhouse the day after the curbside pickup ended. You should be disgusted with yourselves for dumping multiple medication packs with medication still in them, including Ritalin and contraceptive packets. Young children walk past my house to get home from school, and one child has already picked one of the packets up, bringing it to my attention. Shame on you. In block capitals, there are public shaming using the SE, like very Mama Grizzly mode for ESFJ. Here we go. Council and police have been contacted regarding this matter. These actions endangered many children. Just found out that Chloe lived right next door, which makes you even more disgusting because having lived here, you know that children frequently walk past on their way home from school. Now, this particular individual, I went through the Kersey type indicator with it. Yeah, she's a ESFJ. So there's an example of the ESFJ using SE, but it's used as a tool to sort of enforce the conventional morality, the Mama Grizzly mode. So those are some examples. And then ENFP using FE to do their social justice warring, they're advocating rather. Counsellor role, drawing on a bit of FI maybe. So that's some of the examples of, and I would argue composer using SI, imaginative subfunction, and the same with the crafter, SI imaginative subfunction, because both of those two types have very high activity in the back of the brain with sort of visuospatial intelligence. Right, so that's just sort of like talking about the importance of that position, that third slot. So remember, I showed you the graphic with Van der Hoop, the FE and the NFP, and the NI and INTP. So now for some subfunctions of TI. Right, cash for questions. Okay. Much is made of archetypal influence in Jung rather than Beer's argumentation. Social, no, not social instinctor. Is sensual, sensuo. Is that what sensio? Sensory instinctor. Force sensation, which might find its fishes more. How dare she? Yes. Right. So subjective based. Now I should have this here will to systematization. I don't really see that in STPs. On a tactical level, say with gambling, various gambling systems, but that's more of a NTP thing, will to systematization. Very much INTP. Even systematize the subfunctions. Logic of uniform structure, I'm right. Well, in the way that it's asserted, but I like to separate logic out from T and TI because it's neither extroverting nor subjectifier, or empiricalizing, or because it's independent of those two viewpoints. You know, there are other kinds of thinking outside of T and TI, such as perception. Reading this book, Shot by Shot, has been training up my visuospatial thinker, especially talking about shot progression and which ones were progressive and not progressive because of like different forms and like is it progressively like showing different vanishing points with perspective and that lot. Yeah. Integration of theories, I would say, yeah, harmonizing. And I say we see these things with TI. So this is from the Kersey profile, and there's some bits in here that I think we could argue are TI. So ideas to carry their own force of them, although they are subject to every idea to the test of usefulness. Okay, so idea, we can sort of put idea sort of like vaguely if we want to tag it. We might put a tag on there of TI and a tag on there of NE. Difficulties are highly stimulated ideas who love responding to a problem that requires creative solution. These traits are carried to lead them to occupations where you might get a bit more TI in the theoretical models part, but then it's being applied into actuality. They build data and human systems wherever they work. It's that can be outstanding scientific executives and bits. That is about as closest I could get to TI in sort of tagging a sentence in Kersey's INTJ profile. Like maybe where they're using the theoretical models, if they can apply them, and if it passed the test of there, subject every idea to the test of usefulness. So they're overthinking about ideas, but the filter is this useful? Is this idea useful? So it's like these TI things are going to come up. So, okay, so I might posit this. INTJ will use TI generally in two ways that we can see easily. One is the ideas in the thinking in their mind, and it's like that will either be sort of discarded or have the idea, oh, that's an interesting notion. If it's useful to apply, then it passes over from TI into TE because they're thinking about a practical application. And so it's like it's the modest, it's the servant of the TE. The TI is the servant of the TE in INTJ. And then also using TI in, well, they'll come across a theory and the way they critique it. And you've got Galenka's nickname for the INTJ, the I.L.I is the critic. So in the way they find fault with, so say you have a conversation between INTJ and INTP. INTJs can hold their own with INTP at the level of TI, and issues with and questions about a model or a structure that they don't care to produce their own unless there's utility in it. But they can critique and ask very good questions. So there, it's like it's serving all the mass. It's the modest servant TI. Right. So what's the next one? It's not a long video. This one, not a long video. So we're going to go through Victor's. Oh, not a long video. It's 22 minutes already. So let's go through some of these. Well, we got how Victor defines. Now you see, the thing is this. This sounds like ISTJ because he calls LSI inspector. Logic of fractal structure. Now this, yeah, that's how INTPs think. Right, and he even puts there, like, this is the kind of structural logic characteristic of I.L.I. Yeah, but you see, the thing is, though, that's how INTP thinks, but that's not necessarily TI. That's within the context of their temperament and intuition as well. So that's definitely how they think. And Van der Hoop wrote will to systematization, but I think that's more STPs. Work slowly but conscientiously, paying close attention to detail. Again, when you see the TI plus, this is going to sound like LSI, and so this is going to sound like KBN ISTJ. Close attention to detail. Okay. The kind of details that TI would pay attention to would be sort of logical details in a logical progression. Not because TI is logic, but because TI relies on logic for going from subjective premises to rational elaboration, especially in NT is the way they use TI. Tries to calculate possible items in advance while striving to optimize the processes within a system and eliminate all the defects. Calculate the possible outcomes in advance. Right, so again, the way Victor considers the TI is different from me. I see it as subjective thinking, and he's got here as logic of uniform structure. Now, arguably, I could maybe say that assertive TI is a lot like that. Like, you can get some NTPs that really assert their theory. As like, it's almost like the one true TI, like the one true God. Mind of a programmer. Prone to accumulation and analysis of information in various states of life. Well, this might be because INTJ 5-ish, rather Enneagram 5 fixated many a time. In intuitive logical introverts area of expertise, they can be particularly meticulous and even pedantic. Yeah. Debug of organizational systems. It depends how much we think this is TI or how much this is just thinking. I would say this gets to it because you're getting some speculative thinking. Calculate the possible outcomes in advance while trying to optimize the processes within a system and eliminate all the defects. Right. Optimize the processes within the system. Right, going towards TE in the kind of optimization that you want. So the way INTJ and INTP optimize processes might be different. It's like there's different. I'll end this by well, yeah, I know. INTJ has very strong, or rather, it's got unrestricted FI. INTJ, uninhibited FI. INTJ. Yeah. I'll get onto that when I cover slot 6, the suggestible SE. And like Socionics, it's not just about them being like attracted towards assertive SE. There's also the correct. So it's like, think of NI DOMs and musicians, other kinds of other expressions of SE. There's a bit I wanted to mention. About I've forgotten what I was going to say. Right. I mean, there's a lot of that in this. Okay, there's an example of how INTP uses TI is the way Victor has used it in this system. What he's done is he's defined the functions with the charges. Yes, you have, Mickey. You lose a point. You can see here that he's gone off certain assumptions that. So he's going to he defines these charges based on. He's going to say, well, there's two kinds of TI. There's the way LSI uses TI and the way LII uses TI. The problem is that LSI probably really is SITX because as a type, it sticks out like a sore thumb in the beta quadra. And it's more different from its mirror. The sensory introverts in socionics have the biggest difference between mirror pairs. That's because frequently they're the wrong way round. And the EEG data would back that up because all the rational types, the Dario's analysis would show that all the rational types have more activity in FP1 than FP2 for right-handers. So if you're getting somebody who's typed as TISX in KBN and they have more activity in FP1 than FP2, and then in Socionics they get typed as S.L.I, well, that's a problem. And then especially when all of the intertype relations line up as well. So, for example, the MBTI ENFPs, or rather, the MBTI ISTPs do not like the ENFPs. And it's not like the ENFPs are really EIEs. So there's a whole thing that you can play out in terms of like 6 lines of argument you can go with that makes me think that Socionics has mixed up the sensory introverts. And that's why the sensory introverts don't convert over. And it also explains why that DCNH helps to solve that problem. And it also is interesting that DCNH subtypes of the sensory introverts show the greatest variety. So, for example, the dominant subtype of LSI reads like ESTJ, and it refers to Stalin. The normalizing subtype will read like KBN ISTJ. The creative subtype reads like ISTP. It even mentions martial arts and car parts and repairing stuff. It's like proper Kersey stereotype of ISTP mechanic. And it's like, when you look at those, it's like, how are those subtypes of the same type? Completely different types. But this is the premises, and also another reason why it's the way it is in Socionics for LSI is that LSI is a process type. Therefore, it really has to be going through the process. But another thing Socionics would say is the ENFP is a negativist. Yeah. And the INFJ is a positivist. Well, frequently INFJs are Enneagram 4s, and Enneagram 4s are not so positive. And ENFPs tend to be like the most optimistic and arguably naive of the types. So at times, not all, but you know, it's a theme. So the reigning dichotomies, but see, the thing is with the reigning dichotomies, there's definitely something to them above chance. There definitely is. And when I have actually done some videos testing the reigning dichotomies on people, because if it was just by chance, like it'd be like 1 out of 2 times 11 times, and so it'd be highly unlikely to sort of like pass them. But about 50% of people that I did it with went through the reigning dichotomies and got the right answer without knowing what the right answer was. So there is something to the reigning dichotomies, but it's not solid. I don't know what else to say about that. I better stop now. 32 minutes. Yeah. I'll try and give you a bit more on the how INTJ uses NE in the next episode.